Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into the key ideas from Morgan Housel's brilliant book, The Psychology of Money. So here's a thought. What if I told you that getting wealthy has less to do with how smart you are and pretty much everything to do with how you act? Sounds kind of crazy, right? Well, let's find out why it's not. All right, to really get this, let's start with a story, a real-life puzzle, actually. First, you've got a guy named Ronald Reed. He was a janitor, he patiently saved what little he could and just invested it. When he died, he left behind an $8 million fortune. Yeah, you heard that right. Then, on the other side of the coin, you have Richard Foscone. This guy was a Harvard-educated finance exec, made a ton of money, and went bankrupt. So the question is, how does that happen? Well, the answer to that whole puzzle really comes down to this one core idea. You see, managing money, it's not a hard science. It's not like physics where there are these strict, unbreakable laws. Nope, it's a soft skill. Ronald Reed, the janitor, he mastered the behavior side of things. Richard Foscone, the exec, well, for all his knowledge, he didn't. It just proves that your mindset is a way more powerful predictor of success than any fancy degree on your wall. All right, so it's not about being a genius, it's about how we act. And that opens up a really interesting question. Why is your financial worldview so unique? Why do we do things with money that seem perfectly logical to us, but might look totally bonkers to someone else? Okay, check this out. It's a classic example that, on the surface, just seems totally illogical. Why would someone who doesn't even have $400 for an emergency go and spend more than that on lottery tickets every year? I mean, statistics show that the lowest income folks in the US spend way more on lottery tickets than the richest folks. From the outside, you look at that and think, that's a terrible decision. But here's the thing. What looks irrational from your point of view might make perfect sense from theirs. You have to try and see it from their perspective. For someone who's just struggling to get by with not a lot of ways to move up, a lottery ticket isn't really a financial spreadsheet decision. It's buying a dream. It might be the only tangible shot they feel they have at a completely different life. It's about buying hope. And this really shows how our experiences, especially when we're young, completely hardwire our financial DNA for life. I mean, think about it. If you were born in the 1970s, you grew up watching the S&P 500 just explode. So of course, you'd think stocks are amazing. But if you were born in the 1950s, you saw a flat market, you'd probably be way more cautious. The point is, the financial world you were born into becomes your baseline, your reality. So the big takeaway here is actually pretty simple. No one is crazy. We all make financial choices that make perfect sense based on our own unique story, our own view of how the world works. What you do makes sense to you. What I do makes sense to me. Nobody's nuts. Okay, so now that we've established that we all have our own unique programming, let's get into the next big thing. Let's uncover the invisible engines of wealth, the real drivers of financial success that are so often overlooked. Let's talk about Warren Buffett. We all know he's an amazing investor, right? A genius. But his real secret weapon, his superpower, it's not just his brain. It's time. The guy started investing when he was just 10 years old. His entire success story is basically a masterclass in the mind-blowing power of compounding interest, just let loose over a ridiculously long period. Now, just to put that into perspective, look at this number, $81.5 billion. That's the amount of his fortune he earned after his mid-60s. I mean, think about that. Over 96% of his wealth came after he was old enough to collect Social Security. It just proves his skill is investing, but his secret is time. And then there's luck and risk. They're two sides of the same coin, and you can't control either of them. Take Bill Gates. He had a 1 in a million stroke of luck, happening to go to one of the only high schools in the world that had a computer back then. Amazing, right? But risk is always lurking. His friend Kent Evans was just as smart, just as driven, but he had a 1 in a million stroke of bad luck, a tragic mountaineering accident, and he never got to see his dream through. And finally, one of the biggest engines of wealth is understanding that success isn't about being right all the time, not even close. It's about these things called tail events, a few huge wins that pay for all the losses. I mean, look at Amazon. Their growth isn't from a bunch of little successes. It's almost all from 2 home runs, AWS and Amazon Prime. Those 2 things were so successful, they paid for every other failed experiment, like the Fire Phone, remember that? 100 times over. It means you can actually be wrong most of the time and still win big. So, okay. We get the big forces at play. But knowing about them is one thing. The other part of the equation is navigating the psychological hurdles, the mind traps that can cost you everything. And the first trap is maybe the most dangerous one of all, the social comparison ladder. It's so easy to get caught on this thing. You're a doctor making 500 grand a year, you feel pretty good. Until you move in next to a CEO making 10 million. And that CEO feels rich until he's at a party with his buddy Michael Jordan, who's worth billions. You see how it works? The goalpost for what feels like enough is always moving. And that is the real danger right there. There's always a bigger fish. This constant comparison is the reason why people who have everything they could possibly need still risk it all for more money that they don't need. It's a trap, and it's a powerful one. Another huge trap is just how much pessimism sells. Our brains are naturally drawn to it. And why is that? Well, pessimism just sounds more intelligent. Losses are sudden, they're dramatic, they grab your attention. But progress is slow, it's quiet, it happens over such a long time that it's easy to miss. An optimist can sound like they're just trying to sell you something, but if you look at history, being an optimist has been the much more rational bet. And all of this, all these ideas, they lead us to the final and maybe the most crucial point. It's about totally redefining what rich even means. What are you actually working for? What's the real goal here? Okay, this is so important. We need to understand the difference between being rich and being wealthy. See, being rich is about your current income. It's visible. You can see it in the fancy cars, the expensive clothes. But wealth is what you don't see. It's the assets that haven't been spent. It's the cars not bought, the first-class upgrades you pass on. It's the money that's still there, working for you. So if you want to build that real, unseen wealth, you have to shift your mindset about market volatility. You have to understand that those scary downturns and wild swings, they're not a fine for doing something wrong. It doesn't mean you made a mistake. Now, that volatility, that's the price of admission. It's the fee you have to pay to get into the theme park, where the best rides, the long-term returns are. If you think of it as a penalty, you'll sell at the worst possible time. But if you see it as the ticket price, you'll stay for the whole show. And what's the whole point of paying that price? What's the ultimate goal? It's not just to see a big number in your bank account. The highest dividend money pays is the ability to control your own time. It's waking up in the morning and saying, you know what, I can do whatever I want today. That freedom, that is the most valuable thing money can buy. So, as we wrap this up, I want you to really think about this question. What would you do if you had complete control over your time? If you could do what you want, when you want, with whoever you want, what would that look like? Because figuring out your own answer to that question, that's the real first step to building a life that doesn't just look rich, but feels wealthy.